el día, pero siendo un simposio internacional, sí vale la pena. So I'm going to do this slightly bilingually, but it won't be for the whole conference, I promise. But, you know, since we are an international symposium, it feels more or less appropriate. Entonces, bueno, me presento. Yo soy Claudia Brittenham, soy profesora en la Facultad de Historia del Arte, la Facultad de Raza, Diáspora e Indigeneidad, aquí en la Universidad de Chicago, y también soy directora del Centro de Estudios Latinoamericanos. I'm Claudia Brittenham, professor in the departments of art history and race, diaspora, and indigeneity here at the University of Chicago, and also director of the Center for Latin American Studies. Y me da mucho gusto darles la bienvenida a este segundo coloquio internacional sobre el tema de espacios sagrados. Desde los principios del tiempo, el espacio es una cosa que nos ha unido y la gente ha descubierto modos de sacralizar al espacio a través de la arquitectura, el ritual, las modificaciones del paisaje y otras intervenciones, tanto tangible como intangible. Welcome to the second International Colloquium on Sacred Spaces. Since time immemorial, space is something that has unified all of us, and people have found ways to make space sacred through architecture, ritual, landscape modifications, and other interventions, both tangible and intangible. En los próximos 2 días nos vamos a juntar para pensar de un modo comparativo sobre estos temas en este coloquio internacional. In the next 2 days, we're going to gather together in this international colloquium to think with investigadores, con investigadores de los Estados Unidos, de México, de la España, de la Escocia, y ya no me acuerdo de qué otros lugares. We have in this international colloquium scholars from Mexico, the United States, Spain, Scotland, and probably somewhere else that I can't remember. And we're going to be thinking together comparatively about these questions. Pero al principio quisiera reconocer que estamos aquí en tierras de los primeros pobladores y que Chicago ya ha sido desde hace mucho tiempo el territorio tradicional del Consejo de los Tres Fuegos, que consiste en las naciones Ojibwe, Odawa y en esta tierra más que todo Potawatomi. Y que también hay otras naciones nativas, tanto como los Sac, Ho-Chunk, Fox, Miamia y muchos otros que han desde mucho tiempo tenido derechos y responsabilidades a esta tierra. Que tantas naciones han tenido este trama entretejido de obligaciones y derechos nos invita a pensar a alternativas a este mundo de fronteras en las que vivimos ahora. Y también es importante reconocer que Chicago es actualmente el lugar de una de las comunidades nativas más grandes en los Estados Unidos y que también es hogar para mucha gente indígena en diáspora de muchos lugares a través del mundo, sobre todo de México. Bueno, before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we are gathered here on Indigenous land, that Chicago has long been the traditional territories of the Council of the Three Fires, a confederation that consists of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and in this region, especially Potawatomi nations, and that Chicago is also a place of where many other communities, other Native nations, including the Sac, Ho-Chunk, Fox, Miami, and other nations have long held rights and responsibilities. That we are here in this region of overlapping rights and responsibilities invites us to envision alternatives to the nation state and its borders. I also want to acknowledge that today Chicago is home to one of the largest Native American communities in the United States, and that it is also home to Indigenous people in diaspora from all over the world, including Mexico. Bueno, el coloquio de hoy es el segundo coloquio Espacios Sagrados, basado en el éxito de un simposio que tuvimos el año pasado en la ciudad de Oaxaca. Y Este fue organizado por la UNAM Chicago y la UNAM Oaxaca y esperamos que que sea el empiezo de una tradición que sigue en mucho más tiempo. And so today's conference builds on the first International Colloquium on Sacred Spaces, which was organized in the city of Oaxaca by UNAM Chicago and the UNAM Oaxaca last year. And we hope that this is the beginning of a beautiful tradition. Entonces, al final quisiera reconocer el apoyo de la Universidad de Chicago, del Provost Global Latin America Fund, el Centro de Estudios Latinoamericanos, el Centro CATS de Estudios Mexicanos y la Facultad de Historia del Arte. I want to recognize the support from the University of Chicago, which comes from the Provost's Global Latin America Fund, the Center for Latin American Studies, the CATS Center for Mexican Studies, and the Department of Art History. La Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, aquí en Chicago, y la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas, tanto en su sede en la Ciudad de México como en su sede de Oaxaca, también han apoyado a este simposio. Y bueno, les daré la palabra en algún momento muy cortito. So the National Autonomous University of Mexico here in Chicago and the Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas, the Institute of Aesthetic Investigations, the Department of the Unit of Art History at the UNAM have also contributed very generously to this conference, and the Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas, both in its seat in in Mexico City and in in Oaxaca have been among the most generous supporters of this event. Y para finalizar, quisiera agradecer a mis co-organizadores en el comité académico, Denise Fallena y Robert Markins, y también el apoyo de toda la gente de la UNAM Chicago, entre los cuales destacan Erika Erdely y Alberto Fonserrada. And so finally, I just want to begin by thanking my co-organizers on our academic committee, Denise Fallena and Robert Markins, as well as the invaluable support of everybody at the UNAM Chicago, out of whom I will single only Erika Erdely and Alberto Fonserrada. Bueno, bienvenidos. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Denise Fallena. I'm from the Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas. I'm a researcher, art historian. I am specialized in medieval and colonial art. And well, I want to say some words to this event. 9 years ago, I began collaborating in several projects with UNAM Chicago, representing Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas de la UNAM, our campus in Oaxaca. Throughout the years, this partnership has been growing, delivering great results for both entities. This colloquium, the second edition of Sacred Spaces, is the result of the professionalism and endless effort of dear colleagues and friends. This had permitted to strengthen bonds with universities and academic institutions from Latin America and the United States. On behalf of Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas UNAM and its director, Dr. Angélica Velázquez, I would like to thank University of Chicago for organizing this event. Also thank each one of the lecturers which graciously have accepted to participate, sharing their findings and expertise, and last and not least, to everyone participating. Welcome to this academic sacred space. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Erika Erdely, Academic Coordinator at UNAM Chicago. And on behalf of our director, Dr. Guillermo Pulido, I'm honored to welcome you to this event. I'd like to begin by sharing some background on the history of this colloquium to give you a sense of what brings us together today. Denise Fallena, as you just mentioned, has been coming to Chicago for over a decade, offering continuing education to Mexican adults. Though they never had the opportunity to attend college, were eager to deepen their knowledge and connect with their cultural heritage. This initiative eventually led to other efforts, especially when the pandemic started, including highlighting the work of UNAM art historians, especially those based in Oaxaca. During the pandemic, they organized a wonderful series of 10 lectures called Miradas Recientes a las Historias del Arte en México, which you can still enjoy at UNAM Chicago's YouTube channel. Just like this event will be available there for future viewing. Building on that success, UNAM launched an international online course, Images of Identity and Power, featuring talks by professors from UNAM, as well as institutions here in Chicago, like this university and the Newberry Library. 2 years ago, Denise and I began discussing what could come next, and she suggested the theme of this colloquium, Sacred Spaces, though the original title was much longer. It came out to. Denise has this talent for choosing broad, multidisciplinary topics that allow for diverse perspectives from different periods, providing a platform for the research of many scholars. Rather than narrowing the focus to a single subject, the goal here is to foster cross-pollination of ideas among academics from various fields. Another important aim of this seminar is to open up this kind of academic work to a wider audience beyond just the specialists, so that more people can engage with the incredible research being done at our universities. Our first Sacred Spaces colloquium was held last year in Oaxaca, and many of you were there. It was a tremendous success, and we had already planned to host the second part here in Chicago. So here we are. We are especially grateful to Claudia Brittenham for making all the arrangements to host these events here at the University of Chicago and for securing the funding to support it. I'd also like to thank our organizing committee again, Denise Fallena, Claudia Brittenham, Robert Marquez, and Claudia Ruiz, who couldn't make it to Chicago, but she worked from Oaxaca. And of course, my colleague Alberto Fonserrada from UNAM Chicago. We are also deeply appreciative of our partners at the Newberry Library, who will be hosting tomorrow's session. And of course, a big thank you to my colleagues at UNAM Chicago, from the designers and administrators to the technical team. None of this would have been possible without your help. I hope these next 2 days are both enriching and enjoyable for all of you. In a world as complex and challenging as ours, we might be tempted to focus on more pressing, trendy issues. But I believe that in contemplating beauty, we can find a kind of salvation. Art and nature offer us something that no one can take away from us, an opportunity to enrich our spirits and cultivate the sacred within ourselves. Thank you and enjoy the event.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here today to welcome you to the University of Chicago. My name is Kate Moore, and I serve as the Senior Director for Global Initiatives and Strategy here at UChicago. And I'm honored to represent UChicago Global in kicking off today's colloquium and what promises to be an incredibly engaging 2 days of discussion. So since the University of Chicago's founding, scholars at UChicago have been driven by the pursuit of knowledge, characterized by rigorous inquiry and deep engagement with collaborators across disciplines and across the world. For more than a century, UChicago faculty and students have worked in other countries and in collaboration with scholars around the world. Today, that reach extends further than ever. We have significant initiatives and programs in over 50 countries and on every continent. So at UChicago Global, we work to closely with our partners to build global networks, to reduce administrative barriers, and provide resources and tools to support this international engagement. Our regional funding mechanisms are prime examples of these efforts. And as Claudia mentioned, the Provost Global Faculty Awards seeds projects that mobilize UChicago faculty across borders to engage in transformative research partnerships with the global community. So I'm delighted that UChicago Global, in coordination with the university's Faculty Steering Committee for Latin America and the Caribbean, supported today's colloquium, and we look forward to the insights and outcomes of these important discussions. And I also want to take a moment to thank our dear partners, UNAM. The University of Chicago has a long and rich history of engagement in Latin America and the Caribbean. UChicago Center for Latin American Studies, the CAT Center for Mexican Studies, host a multitude of interdisciplinary programs, educational initiatives, and host visiting scholars from the region. But we also have deep connections with the region in every division and school on campus, as well as our national labs, the Argonne and Fermi Lab. So our institutional partnership with UNAM is particularly special. It's enhanced by their institutional investment and their physical presence here in Chicago, and through UNAM Chicago. And over these past several years, UChicago Global has welcomed students and scholars from UNAM along with their senior leadership. And together, we are working to strengthen those existing institutional ties, but also to build new opportunities in finance, business, law, quantum science, and in the humanities. So thank you to the UNAM team. And thank you, Claudia, for the invitation. So with that, I'll hand it back over. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Now, before we get to our keynote speaker, I just want to make 3 unglamorous announcements that are undoubtedly deeply of interest to everybody. So coffee and pastries, if you haven't found them, out the door through the hallway. If you continue on past that, you will find the restrooms. Men's restroom will be continuing on through the hallway. Women's will be to your right. And if you need a guest Wi-Fi password, raise your hand. Wonderful. So welcome, everybody. We're so delighted that you're here today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Robert Markins, a researcher in the Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas in extension of Oaxaca. And we're going to begin our program today of Espacios Sagrados, the second year of it, with the keynote address to be delivered by one of the distinguished professors of the Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas. This is Dr. María Teresa Uriarte, who you can see before you. Before she begins, I'm going to read you a brief summary of her very long and distinguished career. She has afforded us a semblanza or a summary of her work, but it's a mere fraction of what she has done. So with that, I will read it to you, and then I'll hand it over to Dr. María Teresa Uriarte. Dr. Uriarte is currently working at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. She has written and edited 29 books and many chapters and articles. She has a long academic and administrative career. She has been director of her institute, the Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas, and she was a member of the board of directors of the university and was in charge of the cultural affairs of the university. She has received the University of Mexico's award, the Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, Medal, and recently she has been distinguished with the Tatiana Proskuriakov Award and Lecture Series of Harvard University, and she is chair of the Senior Fellows at Dumbarton Oaks. So with that, we'll give Dr. Uriarte a warm welcome, and we will turn the show over to her. Dr. Uriarte, please begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I'm very thankful for your introduction. I want to say that Guillermo Pulido first invited me, so I'm very thankful to UNAM Chicago. And then I was approached by my dearest friend, Claudia Brittenham. We've been friends for a very long time, and I admire her work, and she's a solid scholar, and we share many things together. And I'm grateful as well to UNAM Oaxaca, Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas there, with my dear friend Denise Fallena, and colleague and dear friend as well, Robert Markins. So thank you, everybody. If I'm missing someone, please forgive me. But I'm very happy to be here this morning, and I hope I can share some of my long contact with pre-Columbian mural painting. Mural painting as a scheme of architecture is a powerful tool to know about the people who painted buildings in pre-Columbian Mexico. Today, we shall see some of these messages through birth and death in pre-Columbian mural painting. Every living creature undergoes birth and death. In almost every culture, these events were and still are accompanied by what we know as rites of passage. Both moments represent liminal situations that are connected to an undefined type of existence, as if a channel opened to a different types of existence. This characteristic may have inspired ceremonies related to birth and death in different periods and places. In Mesoamerica, as in other parts of the world, dreams and altered states of consciousness were considered passages to reach a different reality. This supernatural region is generally believed to be the abode of ancestors, and therefore a realm to search for answers of all kinds of questions, either related to health and healing, to the finding of lost objects. I'm afraid. Yeah. There we go. I thank my daughter, who is always present and helping me today. So when you make a travel to these regions of the ancestors, you might be looking for answers of all kinds, either related to health and healing or to the finding of lost objects or animals. But there are also metaphorical births and deaths. Those experienced when liminal moments or spaces are recreated. For instance, after an initiation rite, the novice is considered to have been born again. In other cases, different beings visit the land of the dead. In Mesoamerica, for example, the sun was believed to start a voyage every night through the underworld, a watery and nocturnal region that was considered part of the cosmos. These celestial bodies travel through this realm. Venus, for instance, has different voyages, some nocturnal and some that take longer periods. As we will see, the metaphorical births or double births were important, not only as symbol of rites of passage, but for many ancient cultures, they were a crucial part in the maintenance of the balance of the universe. Double births and their symbolism in the Occidental world. When a novice participated in an initiation rite, he was metaphorically experienced a second birth, and thus becoming a twice born. In nature, there are many beings that have double births. In fact, every creature that comes out of an egg, such as birds and snakes, are considered twice born. The laying of the egg represents the first birth, and hatching is the second birth. In the case of twice born humans, the laying of the egg corresponds to the natural birth, and the hatching occurs when an initiation rite, when the experience, there's a supernatural birth. The archetypical image of the broken egg symbolizes the rupture of existence, that is, transcendence in cosmic space and cyclic times. All the images that express the paradox of existing time function analogically to express the passage from ignorance to illumination. According to Erdely, a metaphorical death is necessary to begin a spiritual life. Spiritual death is usually represented by darkness, the cosmic night, the telluric womb, and the belly of a monster. All these images are also related to germination and embryology, as well as to the realm of the dead and the ancestors. It is interesting to notice that agricultural societies' earth is considered the essential source of life, and hence the human body is regarded as a seed that has to be buried in the ground before it can sprout. This explains why many initiation rites include a symbolic burial and a return to earth, such as the idea of being swallowed by a monster. Cacaxtla's mural painting. Let's now turn our attention to Cacaxtla. The murals were painted during the so-called Epiclassic, between 600 and 1000 AD, a time of political and social changes. Several publications present different interpretations of the murals, meaning. Today, I would like to offer a new proposal for the mural known as the battle. It is evident that there is some sort of battle where the winners are dressed as felines and those defeated as birds. The whole scene is painted on two walls divided by a stair. They have an east-west orientation, apparently following the path of the sun. As many authors have shown, celestial bodies such as the sun and the moon, the stars and Venus in particular, have a great importance in pre-Columbian cosmovision. The cycles of these celestial bodies were used as a reference to create calendars. Nowadays, several indigenous communities still celebrate rituals and ceremonies addressed to the moon, the sun, and Venus. Apparently, these ceremonies include bloodletting, incense burning, like copal, and prayers. Several representations from the Maya area might be interesting to discuss here, like the bench of Las Sepulturas in Copan. Here, we see the sun, the moon, and Venus. The planet representation is a supernatural entity that embodies the maize god with a caudal segment of a scorpion, including the telson or the sting. We have another representation in Chichen Itza at Las Monjas complex, an anthropomorphic scorpion on top of the Venus or star glyph. These and other examples have convinced me, among other authors, that Maya people saw a scorpion constellation in the night sky. The ceramic plate K4565 shows the maize god dressed in the same glyph and the scorpion caudal segment or tail, so there seems to be a frequent link between the maize god, Venus, and the scorpion. And look at these murals in the Venus temple in Cacaxtla, where we can gather all these symbols together. The maize god characteristic traits and its presence in Cacaxtla. I will now analyze the iconography of the maize god, starting with a plate of this unknown provenience, now in the New Orleans Museum of Art. Please notice the 5-pointed star that the maize god is wearing. According to William Saturno and Carl Taube, the earliest painting of the maize god is found in San Bartolo, Guatemala. This deity can be identified by a lock of hair on the forehead. One of the characteristic traits And please notice that his hands are tied, so he is a captive. In Olmec Middle formative iconography, the Olmec maize god head as well as the kernels are framed by a U-shaped brackets. Let me show you this wonderful piece found in Teotihuacan. I want to emphasize that these three anthropomorphic maize cob heads framed by a U bracket. This means that this particular trait might have had a common origin, which lasted until Cacaxtla. Now I want you to join me in a search of the diagnostic characteristics of the maize god among the Maya and various sacrifice-defeated warriors in the battle mural of Cacaxtla. Before we embark on our quest, let me just note some interesting paradoxes found in this mural. One of them is that the vanquishers and the defeated are wearing jewelry. The feline warriors had cloth strips on their ears, something normally associated with the defeated. The sumptuousness of the jewels worn by the avian warriors is also unexpected. Let's now begin our search. According to Taube and Saturno, the leg hair lock over I think I'm lost. Since it's so commonly represented in other depictions of the deity, the lock in the forehead. During the classic period, when the rulers were portrayed in the guise of a specific manifestation of the maize god known as Ajan, they were depicted wearing a hair lock over the forehead, like in each Hanab Pakal. This are here because I wanted to show you the ear, the clothes ears they are wearing, because those are related to sacrificial or defeated warriors. Now we have here the lock of her in different representations that I was looking for, and here we find Kinich Hana Pakal I on the lid of the sarcophagus, Kinich Khan Balam II in the panel of Temple 14 of Palenque, or Yash Chanjopat on Stela 11 of Copan, Itzam Kochkash Balam, the third on lintel 26 of Yaxchilan, is seen attired in the deity wearing a flower diadem. Look at it right here. We see it again at Palenque on the sides of the sarcophagus of Pacal. Lady Sack Cook not only wears the hair lock, but also a quetzal helmet, and we can see how cacao and maize plants sprout from her. By this time, all of you must be truly familiar with the traits of the maize god. Now let's see what we can find in Cacaxtla. As you can see, characters 1 and 5 have the lock of hair. They are shown as defeated and sacrificed. It is remarkable that character 1 on the east wall, just by the stairs, has several locks on his tonsured head, and number 2 is sticking a flint knife on the chest of his ruined opponent. The blood dropping from the wound takes the shape of lips. According to Mary Miller and Simon Martin, green feathers and jewelry allude to the tender maize lips. Therefore, many rulers would wear them, and jewelry alludes to the tender maize lips. Therefore, to identify themselves with the maize god, that's why they use it. This makes me wonder why the defeated warriors in these murals are wearing them, unless they have a strong symbolical meaning. And that could be the reason of why they have them on all sorts of pieces, as pendants or beads, diadems, nose pendants, anklets, bracelets, rich feathers, helmets, and wings. Within these green jewels, the plague diadem is noteworthy. In the Maya area, these accessories worn by descendant divinities, as in this example of a scepter found at the Cenote Sagrado in Chichen Itza. It is also present on the stela H of Quiriguá, as well on the lid of Pacal sarcophagus. In Cacaxtla, it is worn by character 6 on the west wall, among others. The medallions with a face are another distinctive trait of the maize god, and they are worn by the warriors 6 and 10 on the east wall. They look like those worn by the young maize god depicted in an incised plate from Nevash and panel 1 from La Milia, just to mention a few examples. There are so many. More frequently are the green bead necklaces worn by most of the sacrifice warriors of the battle mural, items usually displayed by high-ranked individuals of the ruling class. Another trait of the maize god is that it is often depicted in a flying descending position. There are several examples. The descendant gods at Coba and Tulum, maize deities frequently have wings, which associated them with birds, as seen in Tonina's Tucofaceid and on the San Bartolo murals. At Cacaxtla, it is no news to say that all the defeated characters are dressed as birds, and some have wings too, like characters 6, 11, 21 on the east wall. There you can see them with feathers and wings and all this regalia, which is very characteristic of the fitted in this case. Bones and teeth are also commonly associated with maize deities, not only because of the similarity between teeth and the grains of the cob, but also because in the Popol Vuh, humans were created from maize dough. This book also says that when creator twins died, they were cremated. Their bones were ground and blended with maize flour, and when discarded into a river, they were miraculously reborn. At Cacaxtla, there are several characters who have them, bones or teeth, as a part of their attire. Another interesting piece of jewelry is the ear spool, shaped as a flower, as we see in Stela H of Kiriwa. In Cacaxtla, the most prominent one is that worn by character 6 on the west wall, as you can see it here, flower-shaped ear spool. As we have seen, it is common for rulers to be attired like the maize deity, who normally wears a plaited net-like skirt. We see it on Pacal on his way to being reborn as the maize god. At Cacaxtla, the two most important or remarkable personages are wearing this netted skirt, possibly embroidered with blue-green cylindrical beads. They are the most important characters of the mural, and they conjugate almost all the traits I have mentioned. Besides being the most richly dressed, they have wings and several luxurious pieces of jewelry, just like the maize god or the rulers in that guise among the Maya. That is the plague's diadem or a tonsure forehead, the green bead necklace with a human face, medallion, wristlets and ear spools, and nose plug ended in the shape of bones. Let us now focus on another set of characteristics of maize deities that will help you understand my interpretation of the battle mural. I want to stress those occasions in which the maize god is shown defeated and sacrificed, like in the Venus table of the Dresden Codex on page 19 of the Paris Codex, where he is seen with his entrails torn. Several depictions painted on the bases and plates show the sacrifice of maize as a prerequisite to the rebirth into a new cycle of life and death. The greens seen on some of the characters are, according to Taube, an allegory of the seed flying over the fields to be cultivated. In Mesoamerican myths, when the cereal is symbolically killed, it makes a journey into the underworld. These myths are related to the creation of the world, a liminal moment when time and space are created. That is what I think the Mayan rulers commemorate when they dress as the maize deity. We must remember that death and sacrifice myths concerning cereal deities are not only found in Mesoamerica, but also among the classic Greek, like the myth of Persephone, who spends 3 to 6 months in the underworld and returns to the living world in the spring when the tender cereal sprouts. Winged warriors are among common on the east wall, whereas long-haired here. The long red hair is similar to that of the maize cobs we just saw in the red temple. I suspect that these circles are part of the triumphant warriors. Headdresses could allude to different moon phases. My intuition could be supported by the Yakameshli here. The Yakameshli is wrongly pointed there, but here it's the nose plug that is related to the moon warriors or characters. So I suspect that these circles are part of the triumphant warriors and could allude to moon phases. I think I have given enough evidence to identify the defeated characters with the different characterizations of the maize god, mainly those found in the Usumacinta basin, especially at Palenque. Three Deer and his relation to Venus, a work based on Eric Velázquez's research. Among the Maya, the deer was an important solar symbol since they believed that the sun was riding one. This animal, the deer, has other important symbolic connotations. It was associated with the agricultural cycle, fertility, earth, sacrifice, hunting, rain, and drought. Some scenes in the Madrid Codex show a connection between the act of deer hunting and a scorpion. Both are symbols of the untamed world, but also of maize, rain, lightning, fire, and drought. On page 45C on the Dresden Codex, we can see the god Cha'ak riding a deer. The animal is dying of thirst, and the god is carrying torches in both hands, a symbol of drought. Many of these attributes can be found in the individual depicted on the south doorway of structure A, whose name, as that of the battle captain, is Three Deer. His body is painted black as the earthly attributes of fertile soil, and he dances over an aquatic band. The two most meaningful elements are the conch he holds with his right arm and the red-haired maize god that emerges from it. Look at this. He's so beautiful. Among the Maya, the specific conch was known as Canjub, Maduel, the precious Maduel conch, known from mythological text of Palenque. Maduel was a mythical place of origin and a portal to the underworld, something like the Mexica Aztlán or Chicomostoc. The kind of military sacrifices related attire worn by Three Deer has been known among Mayanists as a Tlaloc Venus war costume, as Helmke and Nielsen have proven. This guise is characteristic of the Tepetes, Batún, and Usumacinta areas, and it was found and used for only a short period between 373 and 7036 AD, according to the dates registered in some monuments. War attire can be seen in lintel 25th of Yaxchilan, in the synoptic stela of Aguateca, and in stela 2 of Las Pilas. Here we see the conch with the plants, so Maduel. In the battle mural, it is all the so-called Venus war Tlaloc attire, which I just mentioned. And here's warrior Three Deer, who wears an attire and has remarkably similar posture to a figure named Ak o Chak, depicted on lintel 25th of Yaxchilan, who represents the deity of rain and lightning. And this evidence indicates that Three Deer, individual represented in Cacaxtla mural, is an analogy of the Mayan god Ak o Chak, who was related to water, fertility, maize, fire, drought, lightning, self-sacrifice, war, as well as the summoning of the ancestors, or maybe hunting and the reminiscence of liminal portals where life sprouts from the underworld. Character 5 on the west wall wears a cape with 5 pointed stars, which most researchers think is an allusion to Venus, and led Eric Velázquez to analyze the name Three Deer from a different perspective. Velázquez concluded that Three Deer was equivalent to Three Manik, Three Chi'ij, and Nahuatl Three Maazatl, meaning that the scene depicted on the murals of the structure B could be related to a calendric date associated with an astronomical event and not just to the name Three Deer. Velázquez explored the date Three Deer in relation with the planet's first appearance in the western sky and both the morning and evening stars, which were the most prominent Venusian events in Mesoamerican cosmology. He found 4 dates, 3 Manik, that were associated to the first sighting of Venus. 2 of them were very close to the first Venusian appearance as the evening star, and the other 2 occurred near its first appearance as the morning star. Interestingly, the analysis conducted by Diana Magaloni proved that the blue background painted on both sides of the mural is of a different shade on each side, suggesting that they meant something different, either the time of the day, the date, or the season. Velázquez interprets the west wall as a reference to the first sighting of the evening star on the western horizon, while the opposite wall is a reference to the morning star. We know Mesoamerican people believed that while Venus was in an inferior conjunction, the planet traveled through the underworld, as this was perhaps the reason why his heliacal rising and necrophiliac attributes. Its rebirth or reappearance thus took place from the land of the dead. The striped body painting of character 25th on the east wall is also an allusion to the morning star, or Tlahuizcalpantecutli, in accordance to the Venusian tables known from the Codex. As pointed out by Edward Seller, an iconography trait linked the heliacal raising of Venus is that his wounded victims are naked, and revealing detail in the image of the maize god impersonators of the East Wall number 6, who is attacked by 3 deer, and is that the projectile point is stuck on his left eye. Such an element might have several interpretations, but they all refer to the morning star and the maize plant. It could be thought, for instance, that in this scene, warrior 3 deer is a sun impersonator. In the text known as Leyenda de los Soles, it was the sun who discharged his dread quill feather darts against Venus, Tlahuizcalpantecutli, and immediately covered his face. Another possibility is related to the patron gods of the morning star, who tear the eyes of their victims with a sharp bone. For Seller, this is an allegory of self-sacrifice and bloodletting performed to ensure the resurrection cycle of nature. More than simple enemies caught and sacrificed in a battle, I am convinced that the naked characters wearing feathers and bird helmets are victims of a ritual sacrifice associated with the sighting of Venus and augurs concerning the maize, cycle of life and death. In a way, it is similar to the gladiatory sacrifice performed later by the Mexica. According to Eric Velázquez, the pattern of these 3 deer, the scene in the west wall, could be interpreted as the first apparition of the evening star at the beginning of the dry season, time for starting war, when the day lasted more than night and forces of dark and death prevailed over the forces of light and life. Meanwhile, the image of the east mural could relate to the first sighting of the morning star in a time of the year when the rains are more intense, but for some reason, the maize plant dies. Maybe because in that year, there was a drought, or the opposite, torrential rains. The cape of character 6 and the blood that drips from his left cheek are clearly reminiscent of a message that is related to rain, while the trapeze and ray symbol used by three deer has solar or igneous connotations. The message of the Western wall may be related to the death of maize at the beginning of May, in coincidence with the first sight of the evening star. Some of the victims in this sacrifice, maize god impersonators, were gutted. We find the same situation in the Paris Codex, which Taube has interpreted as an allegory of the death of the maize seed and that is buried during sowing. As for the loiterers, dressed as felines, they represent the blooded paws that kill or harvest the cereal. On the other side, a sacrifice of maize seeds would also take place, but this time on account of drought, when the deadly forces of the underworld prevailed over life. The battle mural of Cacaxtla. Now that I have exposed all the different aspects of the maize god, how I believe they are represented in the mural of the battle, and the way Venus is related to the whole scene, I can proceed with my interpretation. To me, the murals of Cacaxtla seem to be mainly about the life cycle of maize, the basis of the daily sustenance of pre-Columbian civilization. Its uninterrupted course from birth to death and followed by rebirth was in itself the supreme symbol of life, and it was equivalent with other basic natural cycles, such as the year when it is wet and dry with its wet and dry seasons, the lunar phases, the periods of Venus, and the infinite sequence of days and nights. Other cultural components such as hunting, war, sacrifice, self-sacrifice, and probably the institution of rulership are interspersed in these visual narratives. In my opinion, what is represented is not a battle, but rather a theatrical or dramatized representation of a ritual sacrifice uniting two different canonical events fused together in one scene, capture and sacrifice, where the victims are Venus and the maize. Ceremonial representations in which cosmogony myths and the deeds of the ancestors were reproduced in dramatized ritual dances occur in many parts of Mesoamerica. We can find representations of masked characters performing public ritual dances in the murals of Bonampak. In these dramatizations, where the corn maize, the corn god is also among them, and other supernatural being would turn visible by means of the bodies of the ritual representatives, who usually were in a state of altered state of consciousness that conferred them divinatory powers. In Greek mythology, Dionysian festivities in which agon, the confrontation that happens when nature dies and is renewed, was the focal point of the dramatic performances. The mural of the battle in Cacaxtla could have depicted a ritual representation in which the main focus was the death and rebirth of the maize god. According to Erdely, the ritual repetition of the creation and other primal events was performed with the aim of regenerating the world and human society, because it was believed that these rituals, the gods and their creative energies, would become present. It was a way of reactivating the sacred forces of creation. Through the sacrifice of the maize god and the death of celestial bodies like Venus, the sun, and the moon, with their continued journey to the underworld and their rebirth each day or season, the world and human life were regenerated. In Cacaxtla, as in other parts of Mesoamerica, the ritual representation in mural paintings are an allegory of the continuous cycle of death and renewal that played a vital role in the maintenance of universal balance. But let's see a bit of what happened among the Greeks several hundred years before the murals of Cacastra. One of the most famous gods of classic mythology to have had a double birth was Dionysius. He was the son of Zeus and Semele, whom some consider an earth goddess, while others think she was a mortal, the daughter of King Cadmus of Thebes. Before she gave birth, Zeus threw a lightning to her house, killing her, but he did not let his son perish. The fetus was protected by eye leaves that covered him from the heat. Zeus rescued the immature baby and sewn him to his thigh so he could mature, which explains why Dionysius' other name is Merotrapes, meaning grace in the thigh. When the number of moons was completed, Zeus brought Dionysius to the world, giving him a second birth. It is interesting to note that some of the elements related to Dionysius express the duality of the god as well as his double birth. Wine, for instance, reaches its optimal state after a second birth, and it conveys the Dionysius duality by being a beverage that comforts and liberates, but at the same time can drive people mad when consumed in excess. It is also interesting to see the Amanita muscaria, which is also an attribute of Dionysius. Here, it's a fungus, the red fungus with white dots. And it's highly hallucinogenic. And he considers the source of intoxication attributed to Dionysius by the Amanita muscaria mushroom for two reasons. First, his festival Ambrosia takes place in October, the fungus season. And second, the initials of the ambrosia ingredients spell the Greek word for mushroom. It is important to mention that the white dots in Amanita muscaria have an hallucinogenic compound known as bufotenin, the same as asymptotes, which causes visions that were interpreted as divinations. The ritual consumption of these mushrooms also implies a double birth, since it can be ingested directly or through drinking the filtered urine. Dionysius' agriculture and the birth of theater. Dionysius was also associated to agriculture and cereal, like wheat and barley. King Eleusis was another name of the cereal Dionysius, and the story of his life was celebrated in a festivity that corresponds to the Mysterion, Fall Harvest Festival. According to Iliade, the Eleusinian rites, which later became initiation rites, had an agricultural connotation, and they were centered in the death and rebirth of a divinity that controlled the fertility of the fields. Dionysius' association with agriculture is also evident in his manifestation of Sabazian Dionysius, who was represented with bull's horns because he was the first one to yoke oxen to the plow for agriculture. The festivities organized to honor Dionysius include many dances executed by people wearing masks, as you can see them there. Apparently, music, dance, and divination were thought to as products of Dionysian madness. The rural Dionysia took place in December, during the winter period, which is not a demanding time for the farmer. These celebrations seem to have originated on an agricultural festival, and there is evidence of a background infertility event seen in the procession with phallus poles. The city Dionysius was also a major festival in honor of the god Dionysius, among other celebrations. And processions that were competitions between choruses and between tragic and comic playwrights. Francisco Adrados explains that many of these themes treated in Greek comedies are tragedies derived from agrarian festivals. As their core was the conflict of opposing parties or agon, and they usually included the expulsion or death of some of the parties and the triumph of the other one, that is life. Sometimes the question of which side would win was uncertain, and this could vary from year to year, which was probably related with the prognosis for the following year. This conflict between parties was part of a ritual that intended to stimulate the natural forces and the triumph of one of them, the arrival of good weather, or the birth and growth of plants and animals useful for mankind. The ritual involved the performance of a human who represents the community, but the ones who incarnated the conflict natural forces were animals, plants, or individuals wearing animal masks. The ritual showed a tendency to become anthropomorphic, and theater was the culmination of this tendency. So what we see in Kakashla is not alien to other myths and cultures in the world and throughout time. It seems that humans do look for similar explanations when facing similar challenges, and the mural Mesoamerican painting is not an exception. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Uriarte, for your analysis of the murals at Kakashla and its universal implications that we find in other parts of the world, in other cultures. In that sense, it's a very deep and also broad interpretation and analysis of what are universal themes. Thank you so much for your participation, and we are going to spend the next few minutes seeing if there are questions and comments from the observers present. So I'm going to open the floor to our attendants, our attendees, and see what some of the questions and observations are. Does anybody have a question offhand? I'm particularly impressed, Dr. Uriarte, with your references to Mircea Eliade, which offers universal insights to, as you say, the questions that attend all human existence in different parts and places. One of the things that I'm interested in is the nature of humanity, of course. We are in a posture that rightly emphasizes decolonization in Mexico, but some of my colleagues, for example, have get upset with people that use Western models, such as Uriarte. But we all are humans, first and last, and we have similar ways of observing and living in this world. I think that Eliade's insights, especially the myth of the eternal return of creation, are particularly insightful and particularly useful. I do applaud the pan-cultural or universal aspect of your approach. I have a specific question for you about the Kakashla murals, and it is the detail with which they are painted, which strikes me as extraordinary. And one of the things that I'm interested in my own work is the fact that murals like the Kakashla murals are usually what we call the escenario. They are the background for what was more important, the ritual actions, political and religious, that took place in that space. Given your analysis of the murals, do you have an idea or guess about the nature of some of the rituals that would have taken place in that space?
Well, I think that this representation might be a one that depicts a very usual happening. We have found in the project, the mural painting project, that several of these myths that we find painted in different places in Mesoamerica, in Mexico, because we are working on the pre-Columbian mural painting in Mexico, are part of dances which are common in nowadays native or original people festivities. And those are repeated every year. So we think that that's why I'm so appealed at making these comparisons between mural painting and several other themes in the world, because for one reason, it encloses or it includes Mesoamerican art in the general history of art history of the world. It's not a separate phenomenon. It's a human activity which takes place every year in several communities in Mexico today, or in Mesoamerica, Guatemala, for instance. So I think that human beings respond in similar ways to similar questions and similar things or themes or important matters in their lives. So I don't see why it should be seen as colonization. I'm more interested in showing that art is universal, and there are people who still argue that pre-Columbian art is not art; it's a cultural manifestation. And I once and again try to do the same thing that my teacher, Dr. De La Fuente, used to do, to prove that it's within the universal art and it follows same myths and rules and composition and traits of other cultures in the world. And maybe I'm out of faith or out of tension or maybe out of fashion, but I still believe that it's a very powerful tool to prove that man, the human being, is the same all over the world, and it responds in similar situations with the same answers.
It's a very interesting comment of yours that there are some specialists that don't consider pre-Columbian art as legitimate art. If that is so, we might ask the question, why are they attracted to primitive art in quotations if it's not art? They're reacting to it clearly, just as if they do to all art. I want to extend an invitation for others to participate or to ask questions, and I will pass you the microphone.
Wonderful research, Dr. Uriarte. The question I have is, I'm curious about what are your thoughts about the inhabitants of Cacaxtla? How did they know about Maya iconography or this Maya cosmovision? What language did they speak? There are archaeologists who have found evidence about who were the occupants of Cacaxtla. Thank you.
Yes. Those are very interesting questions. Of course, that's what we first question ourselves when looking at the murals. At first, they were thought to be Maya. The thing is that Christoph Helmke and Jesper Nielsen have written a text on the Cacaxtla volumes concerning exactly that, writing and decipherment of some of the glyphs that are painted in the mural. Who exactly were the inhabitants of Cacaxtla? That I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows. It's like these common questions concerning other places like Teotihuacan or some other places, we cannot say with certainty that who were the inhabitants or what language did they speak. But what they conclude, Helmke and Nielsen, is that all the traits of the murals are related to the Usumacinta basin. So maybe the painters from the Usumacinta basin came here, or maybe, this coming and going is as old as the Olmecs. We find evidence of the Olmecs being in the highland Mexico 1,000 years before Christ. So I don't see unusual that the Teotihuacanos went to the Maya area on 341 or 48, that's the arrival of strangers, or that the Olmecs came to the highland Mexico, because human beings have always walked. Ever since the first African ancestor way back, they walk, and they started walking, and they never stopped walking, and they came one way and the other. So that's Nawa Sugiyama has found wonderful paintings which are Maya, and I cannot say anything else. They are Maya in Teotihuacan, in the Las Columnas complex. And I have been working with her and trying, along with other very important scholars, trying to figure out what happened. But we really don't know. We really don't know. How was this interchange or presence or influence, and maybe we will find someday that the Teotihuacan writing is fully deciphered and can read it as well as we now do. Well, not me, do Maya writing, and this may happen with other writing systems in Mesoamerica.
Claudia Brittenham has a question, but I'm a stranger to art history. I come from an anthropology and archaeology background, and the question that the lady asked is a question that recurs in Mesoamerican art history time and again: the relationship between art and art style and ethnicity. We see it, as Dr. Uriarte tells us, with the Olmec. We see it with the Teotihuacanos that extended to the south. We see it in the Mixteca Puebla style. And it's one of the areas in art history, arte indígena, that we need to study more, theoretically and methodologically, the relationship between style and ethnicity.
Tere, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. You've helped me see things about the maize god iconography in the battle mural that I completely missed. So thank you so much. That was really, really fantastic. But as you were talking, it made me think about that thing that Michel Graulich said about this painting long ago, which is, where's the painting, the other side of the cycle, where the bird warriors are defeating the jaguar warriors, right? That if we're seeing in this painting what is the moment of the sacrifice of maize, surely it really is a cyclical story. And this has always bothered me about Cacaxtla. Where's the moment of maize's rebirth? Is that something that's performed? Is that something that you go from the battle mural down into the Red Temple, and that's your descent into the underworld, and the maize is growing out of it? Like, how does this, tell us the other half of the story.
I would love to. I have found it in Chichen Itza. I have found the moment of the burial of the maize god and the rebirth, but I don't see it in Cacaxtla. Maybe, if you say, it might be the maize plants and cacao plants in the Red Temple, but I really don't see it either. I see that maybe because of the time when those murals were painted, war was more important and death was more important than rebirth. But it's like a nonsense to say that, because one is not possible without the other. And you have made a wonderful work on Carcasla murals as well, Claudia, you and Mary in another book. But I just wanted to present this possibility because of the so many maize traits I found in the Carcasla murals, no? But you are absolutely right. I don't see the moment of rebirth. Maybe, as you said, the Red Temple.
Other questions for Dr. Uriarte?
Well, just a comment. I was struck by this debate on if this art is seen as art or not. And I was thinking that every time that I hear a presentation about Mesoamerican art, it's always focused on the symbolic aspect of it. And I don't recall any talk about the aesthetic dimension of it. So maybe that is why the debate is there, no? Because when we see some Western works of art, we always see a little bit of that dimension, not just what it means or what it symbolizes, but the beauty of it. So why is that missing, or it's just me who's missing it?
Well, actually, it's not missing. In the publication of the Carcasla murals, in the Colloquium mural painting series, there is a work concerning exactly composition done by María Olvido Moreno. And it's very interesting that in the Physiología Celular, the Cellular Physiology Institute of the university, a colleague of mine, we have been working on this matter for years. It is very interesting to notice that he works with the brain and what happens with the brain when we see a Precolumbian depiction. And it is very interesting that he's done the golden rule appliance. I mean, applied to the murals in Carcasla, and he has found that it has, of course, golden rule dimensions and composition. So that is more related to art history than cellular physiology, but that's the way we work. I don't know if I answered.
Some great art historians and anthropologists say that the aesthetic endeavor is universal. One of those was Franz Boas, the founder of anthropology at Columbia University. Mm-hmm. And he said in 1927 in his book Primitive Art that the aesthetic dimension is present in all humanity. And it is the mastery of the technical dimension or the technical aspect that imbues a work of art with an aesthetic dimension, and we see it everywhere. So it's definitely present, definitely there, and it's important to religious experience. It's perhaps a heightened level of consciousness, the aesthetic dimension, and it coincides very neatly with the religious experience. So we see it in lots of art around the world. Any other questions, observations for Dr. Uriarte? Well, let's give her an applause for her marvelous keynote speech. Thank you, Dr. Uriarte.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe that we have a coffee break coming up. Is that right? Okay. Okay.